The ZT4200 and ZT5200 are virtually identical. The main difference is the 4200 has 2 cutting blades and the 5200 has 3. This means the 5200 has 1 additional PCBA and fuse. Before servicing this mower, always disengage or remove the batteries. Replacing a PCBA requires removal of the seat. Use a 6mm hex wrench to remove the 2 screws on the front side of the seat. Then move the seat forward to expose 2 hex screws that secure the steel rails to the suspension. Remove these screws, then lift the seat assembly and unplug the connector from the seat switch before removing the seat. Using a 13mm socket, remove the 4 hex bolts that secure the seat suspension base to the mower frame. Then remove the 4 T20 Torx screws that secure the decorative cover on the front of the seat. Release the seat wire harness from the hook. The seat suspension can now be removed. Remove the crossbar over the control box, which is secured with 2 13mm bolts. Removal of the control box cover exposes the PCBAs. Both models have separate PCBAs for the left and right drive motors and the blade motors. Since the 5200 has 3 blades, it has 1 more PCBA than the 4200. Please note that all PCBAs are identical. They're simply wired differently. The wires from each PCBA connect to a separate compartment within the control box. This box also contains connections to the steering lever control assembly and the front frame assembly. To remove any of the PCBAs, start by releasing the 14-pin connector. Note that the wires in the blade motor and drive motor connectors are different colors: red on the right, green on the left. These are not interchangeable. The ZT5200 also has a yellow wire that goes to the 3rd blade motor connector. The 5200 also has an additional fuse, as shown here. With the 14-pin connector removed, disconnect the Type-C plug, which is secured by a wire holder. The rubber cover on the plug should be set aside and reused. Next, disconnect the 4 colored wires and pull them from the grooves to clearly expose the 5 screws that secure the PCBA to the control box. Remove these 5 screws. 2 are Phillips head and 3 are T20 Torx. The PCBA can now be removed and replaced. During reassembly, be sure to reconnect the colored wires in the same order. Note, after a PCBA is replaced, the firmware must be updated and the drive motors must be calibrated following the riding motor calibration procedure. Refer to separate instructions for details. Check and verify the required torque on the bolt clamping the negative terminal at the back of the control box. To access the control box, which contains PCBAs for the drive motors and blade motors, the left and right side covers must both be removed, along with the rear wheels, the seat assembly, and rear guard assembly. With parking chocks on the front wheels, lift the back end of the mower and place jack stands under the chassis just in front of the rear cover. Remove the rear wheels, which are secured with 21mm lug nuts. The next step is to remove the seat assembly. Instructions are found in the section on replacing a PCBA, which appears at the beginning of this video. The decorative cover on the back of the seat is also secured with 4 T20 Torx screws. Using a 13mm socket wrench, remove the left and right steering levers from the mower. Next, remove the cover on the deck height adjustment handle. It is secured with 2 Phillips head screws and a 13mm nut. On the right side of the mower, unplug the Type-C plug and the black plug adjacent to it. These wires link the right side cover to the left side cover. Then lift the wires away from the 4 wire traps on top of the battery management system. On the left side of the mower, unplug the black, yellow, and Type-C plugs. Remove the 4 T30 Torx screws on top of the left cover assembly. The one next to the lever is concealed by a label. There are also 2 screws beneath the fender. The rear guard assembly must be removed before the left side cover can be removed. Use a T30 bit to remove the 6 screws, 2 on each side and 2 on the back. To remove the hitch, use a 13 mm socket to remove the 2 hex bolts that secure the hitch to the frame. Slide the rear guard away from the battery box and disconnect the left cover cable connector. The rear guard assembly can now be removed, along with the left side cover. With the battery box cover lifted, the left side cover should lift up easily. Removal of the right cover assembly is similar to the left cover assembly, with 4 screws on top and 2 beneath the fender. The steering lever bases on both sides of the mower have flexible hose wires going to the control box assembly, connected with a Type-C plug. Use your finger or a screwdriver to reach inside from the front and press on the tab that secures the plug. This releases a connector cover, which should be saved and reused along with a rubber cover on the end of the plug. Also, remove the wire harnesses next to both steering lever bases. Remove the steel cover of the front frame assembly. It's held in place with 3 13 mm bolts that go through the top of the frame. There are also 2 T30 torque screws on the front. With the steel cover removed, release the wire cover and unplug the Type-C plug. Release the wire from the harness hook on top of the mower. Then move to the underside of the mower to release the other 5 harness hooks. The cover plate in front of the seat must also be removed. There are 2 T30 torque screws on top and 2 13 mm bolts on the frame. Removing this plate exposes the last wire harness hook. To access the fuse box, removal of the crossbar is recommended. It's secured with 2 13 mm bolts. Now remove the fuse box cover, secured with 5 T20 torque screws. This cover is sealed with waterproofing compound and may need to be pried loose. The control box assembly is linked to the battery box assembly with a 10 mm black wire terminal, 1 Type-C plug, and 4 positive terminals, secured with Phillips head screws. All of these must be disconnected before proceeding. Continue the disconnection process by releasing the wire harness hooks and unplugging the 4 black motor cables, 2 on each side of the frame. Proceed by disconnecting the blade motor cables located under the mower deck. You can now remove the entire control box assembly, which is secured with 4 T30 torque screws. When reassembling the mower, angle the control box toward the front of the mower and tuck the wires under the crossbar. Secure the control box assembly onto the frame with the 4 T30 torque screws. Connect the 2 black wire terminals, the 4 positive terminals, and the Type-C plug. Be sure to apply a small amount of dielectric waterproof grease to this plug. Replace the fuse box cover. Also apply waterproofing sealant where the orange and black cables enter the fuse box to seal the gaps. Then connect the 4 black plugs that link the control box assembly to the driving motors, 2 on each side, and secure the wires in the harness hooks. Route the flexible hose wires to the right and left steering lever bases. Apply dielectric waterproof grease to the Type-C plugs and replace the rubber cover before plugging them in. The longest flexible hose wire goes to the front frame. Secure this wire in the 5 hooks under the mower frame and the 1 on top. Apply dielectric waterproof grease before plugging in the Type-C plug. Now mount the steel cover onto the front frame assembly with the 3 bolts on top and 2 torque screws underneath. Connect the remaining 2 wires from the control box assembly to the blade motors. Replace the cover plate onto the mower and mount the crossbar above the control box assembly. Be sure to follow the recommended torque. Now mount the left and right cover assemblies onto the mower. Each is held in place with 2 T20 torque screws beneath the cover and 4 on top. Connect the wire harness to the left cover assembly by connecting the yellow and black plugs and the Type-C plug, aligning them into the slots as seen here. Be sure to apply dielectric waterproof grease to the Type-C plug. The two wires that link the left and right cover assemblies should also be aligned in the slots, as seen here. Also, make sure that the charging fuse from the left cover assembly is inserted into the slots beside the yellow plug. Using a 10mm socket wrench, connect the wire harness from the battery box assembly with the fuse box, starting with the orange wire. When connecting the black wire, it should be seated under the eye connector and routed into the slot that comes from the battery box assembly. The wire harness also includes the Type-C plug. Add dielectric waterproof grease before connecting it. Also apply waterproofing sealant where the orange and black cables enter the fuse box to seal the gaps. Slide the cover onto the fuse box bottom and tighten with the 5 T20 Torx screws. Mount the rear decorative cover and tighten the 4 corresponding screws. Use a 10mm socket wrench to mount the left and right steering levers onto the mower, being sure to follow the recommended torque. Use the same wrench to install the nut on the deck height adjustment handle, then install the cover. Mount the seat suspension base and attach the front seat decorative cover onto the mower. Note: the seat wire harness should be routed upwards and around the left side of the seat's suspension rod. This facilitates the plug connection to the sensor switch at the bottom of the seat assembly. To replace the seat, place it against the front of the suspension base and align the holes. Use a 6mm hex wrench to affix the seat rails to the base. Once the seat is secured, move it forward to expose the 2 backside mounting holes in the steel rails of the seat assembly. Secure the rails with the 2 remaining hex screws. Then move the seat all the way back and hook the wire harness onto the seat suspension base. Now install the rear wheels, ensuring that the valve stem faces outside. Follow the recommended torque for the nuts on each wheel, then replace the hubcaps. Complete the reassembly by plugging in the rear guard left cover cable connector. Mount the rear guard assembly onto the mower, and then mount the hitch. Please refer to the EGO service diagram and parts list for specific parts needed for these repairs. Always use genuine EGO parts.